Um, I would like to give an infographics quick start, just a few things about it. Infographic, here will pronunciation is it's a visual image such as a chart or diagram used to represent information or data. That's a very short definition of it, and I would actually prefer to talk about how I do it myself, because that gives the best insight. And I love to make infographics myself, and I can remember quite well that I started as a science journalist 20 years ago. Well, actually, we had the first computer there, and it was a tool for me that was so helpful. And I used the computer not only to write, because I think it's stupid to write on a computer, but I used it also to make infographics, and they always said to me, and I'm not exaggerating, you're playing again. And fortunately, I can proudly say that I'm still playing all the time. I love to make infographics, and the longer I do it, and the longer I work on it, I realize how strong the tool is to give information to a broader public. One of the examples I would like to give is the infographics I made for the so-called cahiers, booklets for the Stichting Biowetenschap en Maatschappij, Biosciences and Society. And I've made a few for this improved Homo sapiens, Man 2.0, and I give you a few examples of the things I did. So this is not a very complicated thing. This is one of the things I want to do to explain how to administer drugs. I'll give you another example. This is just, you don't have to make things new. So here I used, as a background, an old Chinese drawing to give information. I'll show you a few assignments for that booklet I had to make. One was, I had to make an infographic about schistosomiasis. I had to talk about different stages. There are different organisms acting as carriers, and of course in an infographic you have space as well as time to take into account. And what do you start with when you have to make an infographic? It's always important to know who is the audience. What and how, you have to describe an event. So that's what I start with. The when aspect, the temporal aspects, time is very important. Where, in this case, space, and when you talk about such a disease, you have to think about, for instance, the body and things inside and outside the body. And there is something I always have to think about, that's the so-called Gestalt laws. That's something I'm really interested in, and I think that's important to always think about these simple laws. I give you a few examples of these laws. When you look at objects, we immediately see that objects have similar properties, like these squares have also the same colors, and there are circles, they have some same colors, and there is some different circle. Law of proximity, things that are close to each other, next to each other, belong to a group, and even although these squares have a different color from these things, we immediately group these objects. And so when making an infographic, you have to keep that in mind. There is also a very important law, that's the law of connectedness. We are tending to look at things in a direction, for example, from left to right, but also clockwise, and that's the next law. We also have a law, we call that law of closure. When, for instance, these things are grouped in a box, they belong to a certain category, and here the same. So, and then at the end, ultimately, we have the law of simplicity. Look at things, and it's quite often, if I start with infographics, the things I start with are far too complicated. So I first think about making it simpler. I'll give you an example of the material I often have to start with. This is the material of schistosomiasis, and I immediately, and you also, see what's happening here. This is far too complicated. Where do I have to start? Okay, there is connectedness, you see, but there's a B here and a B there, and an A there, and an A here, and a B is there. So where do things belong? Oh yeah, here is a very interesting thing. These arrows are red in the water with blue numbers. Here are blue, it's most probably in the body, inside the body. Blue arrows, and here red numbers, so it makes it all very complicated. So the connectedness, oh yes, it's there. Simplicity, no, it's not there. There is no similarity in drawing style. You see these drawings really made in Illustrator. There are some photographs. So the style of this is completely different. Different drawing styles. Proximity. Well, for instance, here. That is there, it's there. No proximity at all. It's a puzzle, same here. And I always try to avoid puzzles. And the meaning of different colors. I really don't have any idea what the meaning is. So what we always do when we have to make a series of graphics for such a booklet, we start with a color chart. We have a set of colors that we always use. And this gives an idea of the CMYK colors. So for instance, this color is 30% black and 5% magenta, 80% yellow, and some 30% black. So that's what we use then. So for whom is it meant to be? In our case, it's for students, say students from 12 to 14 to 16 or so. That's what we plan to do. So what and how, when, where, and Gestaltlaws. Now this is what I ultimately made from it. So this is the water stage. I have a nice detail because I sometimes post these things on Twitter, and then I ask for comments, and so my public tells me, for instance, well, if this is water, why don't you add waves? And I think that was your suggestion, Bart. Can you remember that? You can remember that. It was you who suggested the waves here. So here you can follow the whole system, and I use photographs and simple arrows to make such a simple infographic, and you see what the difference it is. I have exactly the same information. I even have the different subspecies of the vector, and it's all there. So the same information, and you can follow it from A to B. So what is it? How does it function? When does it happen? And where does it occur? I had another assignment. It was on diseases. This one, I had to make something about malaria. So the different stages, the different organisms acting as carriers, vectors, and of course again time and space involved. And I don't always have to start with new material. I also can use old material, so I can revamp the material I already have. The problem here, so this was information I had some problems here, and maybe you can see what happens if I think about directions. I see, sorry, I did make the same error I think today. I see a direction here, counterclockwise, but here there is an information in the clockwise direction. It's very complicated for the public to figure that out. So what I did was just flipping. It's not that easy because you need a lot of photoshopping, but just flipping the whole infographic vertically, and then you get that movement from clockwise and the same one clockwise. And you see what's happening. I changed the colors a bit darker. So here it's outside the body. Here it's inside the body. Just that's the only thing I have to do. Just a simple case of revamping the information. Another one, I had to make something on osteocytes, osteoclasts and osteoblasts. There are no medical people here, not too many, just a few biologists, I see. And I had to explain what the effect is of exercise, so burdening the bones or on the bone structure. And again, I have, this is the information I have, so I start with information on the internet or in a book or an article. And there is something on osteoblasts, osteocytes, and to be honest, I didn't know anything about this system, so I start for myself from scratch. And of course, you find information on the internet or in an article. This was in a scientific article. And this was exactly what I needed to make the infographic. But what's happening here? So you have walking, the mechanical stimulation, and the mechanical stimulation, there is some mechano-sensing, and there is something that happens in the brain, and you get signals for resorption and from the signals to make bone, because if you make bone and every time you stimulate your bone, it would make the bone stronger and stronger, and if you don't have resorption at all, that would be quite bad for our bones. So there must be a homeostasis, making and breaking, collapsing and blasting. So that's what we have to do. But you see that the information is going to that direction, and that in general is not what I want to do. There's another problem here. It's far too complicated. Does my public need this and that? And even this is probably too complicated for my public. So that's why I start with, it's too complicated, it's too much information, and the information is not aligned in the proper direction. So all I needed was in fact this. And this, actually, probably I didn't even need it. So the wrong direction, and that's the first thing I do when I have to make such an infographic. I start with, how does it look when I flip it, or when I turn it? What else? But this was not enough, so I know the different steps that have to be taken. And then I saw this. This is something I can use. Because here you see the 2 steps. The bow resorption, blasts, and the bow formation of the blasts. And Mara, do you know how to remember that? There was
style of building, right?
Blast of building and yeah, blast are. There was something, some room for it. Yeah. Okay, so this is really something I could use, and you see, this I used in my own. So I stole this. So this I stole, and then I started with the whole process. So here you get the movement, and it has an effect on the bow. There is a fluid here in the bow. It's about the osteocytes, and they feel what's happening. They send signals, chemical signals to resorb and to form the bow. So this is a very simple way of thinking about the whole complicated system. So this and this. And here I start at the beginning and I end how it has been done in the body. And you see step by step, and you also see that I lose a lot of information, but this not necessary information for the public that I have to inform. You see the colors I use are always the same. It's in fact the whole thing I have to do for making it. So, also here, what happened? How does it happen? When did it happen? Step by step, and where did it happen? So, to give a short list again, making an infographic for whom it is meant, identify the event, when does it take place, where does it take place, and gestaltlos. It's not more and not less than visual storytelling. You tell a story and you can do that visually. And I think that as an infographics maker, you're a science writer, not a science writer, a science communicator. You have to tell a story, and I do it with images, and that's also very good to do. The last thing is when I make infographics, function is the most important part. Of course, it has to be nice, it has to be clean, it has to be crisp, but it doesn't have to be beautiful. So, form, aesthetics, always follows function. This is, in fact, what I want to tell you also in a few minutes, short introduction to how to make infographics. And if anyone has interest in doing more with it, I can give a workshop of a couple of hours. I would be pleased to do for a group. So find a group of people and I'll give you a worksheet.
Thank you, Joost.